Hello everyone, I am Nikhil with Shelf-Esteem, a Booktube channel made by a composer for film, television, and gaming, specializing in book adaptations, and this is my end of the month, April 2024 wrap-up. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Nikhil with Shelf-Esteem. For those of you who are new here, I'm a composer for film, television, and gaming, specializing in book adaptations. You might have heard some of my music in The Wheel of Time Season 2, His Dark Materials Season 3, and the official companion album for Brent Week's Lightbringer. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about my April 2024 monthly wrap-up. So this month was kind of a busy work month. But not as busy as I was kind of hoping it would be. The writer's strike has affected a lot of things, and kind of the incoming negotiations of the industry as well over the next couple of months have made things a little bit lighter. So I had a little bit more time to read, though, the upshot of that. So I kind of wanted to discuss the books that I read. I read 4 complete novels. One was a kind of a thriller. One was kind of a high fantasy. One was kind of high concept sci-fi. And then one was, I would say, maybe a thriller, also kind of a drama, and with some supernatural elements. So without further ado, I'll kind of mention them, and I'm going to give them a star rating out of 10. So the first book I read was The House of Small Shadows. So I haven't read Adam Neville before. This was my first foray. I just happened to find it at the library one day, and I thought, all right, I'll pick it up, see what he's all about. And I absolutely love the atmosphere and the tension he builds in this. There's things that where, sometimes the main character is going through the story and actually nothing is happening, but you're seeing it from her POV. And because she's so scared, you start to feel scared. You kind of feel it from her perspective. Brilliant stuff. The ending didn't quite land for me, and I think that's the only reason I didn't give it a higher star rating. I think for me, the first 2/3, if I could, kind of say what that would feel like, that was like a 9 out of 10. Now, the last third, unfortunately, was probably more like a 4 or 5 out of 10 at best for me. I was not too keen on the ending. If you disagree, let me know in the comments. I would love to know kind of your thoughts on it if you've read this book. But for me, I think the total rating for this would probably be a 6 out of 10. Not bad, not spectacular, but good, and definitely worth your time. The second book I read is a chonker. Look at this thing. 800 pages. Read it in 5 days. And for me, I'm not the fastest reader in the world. My wife, Linda, she reads a book a day if she gets really into it. I can't do that quite. But it took me 5 days. And for me, that's kind of really short because these books, normally, they would take me, maybe 2 weeks. So that one is, and I've talked about this on the channel quite a bit, The Forgetting Moon, the first book in the 5-Warrior Angel trilogy by Brian Lee Durfee. High concept, high fantasy, deep lore, religious overtones where there's these different religious factions that all believe they are in the right. So who is actually right? Who's being manipulated in the process? Fascinating character work, reads really fast for an 800-page book, and I'm so excited to see kind of what he does next. But for me, this was a solid 9 out of 10. The only reason that it didn't get a 10 out of 10, for me personally, was that there were enough fantasy tropes that I've seen before that I'm kind of curious to see where he goes in the second book. I get the feeling it's going to deviate that much further. I'm not against anything where there's a lot of familiarity in a book in terms of the trope part of it. But, it kept it from being maybe massively original on a first book. Having said that, some of my favorite authors have written first novels where I felt that way, and way more that way. This still takes hard left turns, I think, compared to those. And in those cases, in the second book onwards, Wheel of Time is the perfect example of that. First book almost feels like Lord of the Rings light. And then the second book onwards, hard left turn into completely uncharted territory. And that's where the brilliance of that series shined. And I get the feeling that I'm going to expect that with Brian Lee Durfee's 5-Warrior Angel trilogy. So definitely check it out. I'm leaving all the links in the description here below, so definitely check that out. And please If you're liking this content, like and subscribe, help out the channel, and help spread the word about it, because all I want to do is keep this conversational, talk about the books that really mean a lot to me, and hopefully get your opinions on books that we should all read together, or I should read, or what your thoughts were on the books that I mentioned. Do you love them? Do you think they're a load of crap? Do you think I'm a load of crap? Let me know in the comments. All right. So that's the second book I read. Fantastic. Check it out. The third book is a masterpiece, and an underrated masterpiece. Now, I just recently done a top 10 Stephen King novel video, and I get the feeling already, just a couple weeks after that video has come out, I'm going to have to amend my top 10 list, because this easily makes it on the top 10. I'm hesitant to even say this, but it might make it into the top 5 eventually. But I'm just very excited about it. It is Under the Dome. I mean, I think this is one of the most underrated novels he's ever done. And a lot of people say that it drags. I don't see that personally. I love character stories. For me, this story is less about the dome and the supernatural elements and more about what humans do to each other when they're put in a corner. I think that's more fascinating. How fine a line are we in a society? We all think that our society has this very well-established construct. But how quickly could that evaporate if something happens? We saw that, in these last few years with COVID, right? What does that do to a society, a collective consciousness? So I think that's the real fascinating take in this. And it has character work up in spades. So if you like that kind of stuff where you're just kind of along for the ride, and you're really seeing these characters develop in this small town where you're getting to know everyone in that town, I think this book is for you. So this was the third one I read. I would easily call this a 10 out of 10. I think this was just a fantastic masterwork, masterfully done. So Under the Dome, Stephen King, definitely check this one out. And the last book needs no introduction because I think I've introduced it half a dozen times already. But I'm going to just say a quick little note about Christopher Rocchio and the Sun Eater series. So this series captured my heart when I first saw it on Mike's book reviews. He had talked about it, I think in 2020 or 2021. Empire of Silence was the first book. I read it, and I quickly read all of the books that had come out at that point. I think it was up to Kingdoms of Death, which is the fourth book. And then I waited patiently or impatiently for Ashes of Man to come out. I read that immediately. Then I, showed those to my wife. I didn't have a wife for 2 weeks. She read all 5 books in 2 weeks. And these are dense books, These talk about very complex concepts. But they're just somehow readable, that you could read them fast because Christopher Rocchio really makes the characters shine. And it's very rare to have that combination where you have high concept sci-fi, very complicated sci-fi, and then characters that you really relate to and that you miss or that you want to see more page time of. I mean, that's a very hard balance to strike, and Christopher Rocchio does that in spades in this book, Disquiet Gods. So this one took me about a week and some change to read, and again, very fast for a book of this density, because the kind of concepts that Christopher Rocchio covers in this is so far off the beaten path of what I've seen in previous sci-fi books. It's unrecognizable to most sci-fi, I think. The first book starts off as being very deferential to Dune, say. But this is on another level entirely. I think if there was a Mount Rushmore of sci-fi, you have your Asimov, you have your Clarke, you have Herbert, right? And now you have Rocchio, the fourth installment on this Mount Rushmore of sci-fi. I think he's going to be known as the greatest, modern sci-fi writer of our time. And so I highly recommend you check him out. Just beautifully done prose, fantastic character work, and just absolutely crazy, stunning, jaw-dropping kind of sci-fi. So the scale, you just feel so small reading this book. It is beautiful, brilliant. So definitely check this out. So those were my 4 that I read this month. What did you read? Let me know in the comments what you read in April. And I look forward to seeing you in May. And this coming month, I'm going to be doing a lot more kind of book recommendations that are more specific in niche genres, because I really want people to experience subgenres and things like that. I think it's more fun to try to find hidden gems that people don't know about, as well as kind of talk more about the books that we've all come to love from watching other booktube channels and things like that. So I'm going to try to balance that out. I'm also going to try to write, make videos based on, tips for reading more, tips for fitting reading into a very busy life schedule, work schedule, family schedule. And I kind of want to talk more about even collecting trap that we fall into as book collectors, as booktube channel owners, as book aficionados, and kind of how to maintain a balanced mind and heart when you're kind of trying to pursue this beautiful but sometimes expensive hobby. So let me know if you want to see any more other topics in the comments as well. Just kind of giving you a preview of May, and look forward to seeing you next time. All right, I'm Nikhil with Shelf-Esteem. Be good to each other, be good to yourselves, and I'll see you very soon. Take care.